and on our website, cspan.org/podcasts.
Washington Journal continues.
We welcome now Douglas Holtz-Eakin back to our desk. He's, of course, the former head of the Congressional Budget Office, currently president of the American Action Forum. And for folks who might not know, what is the American Action Forum? What's your mission?
It's a center-right think tank in Washington, D.C. We evaluate and try to understand the range of domestic and economic policies. We don't do any social issues, international affairs.
Economic policy is very much a part of this budget bill that was passed out of the House Budget Committee last night. The expectation, at least from the Speaker's office, is that it'll get a vote in the House this week. Your 30,000-foot view of this bill, do you like it? What are your concerns?
It's going to do one thing, and that is it's going to avoid a large tax increase in 2026 that would almost certainly lead to a downturn, and that's its great virtue. Past that, it's not outstanding tax policy. It's not a real step forward on the fiscal problems, which we obviously know are really pressing given the downgrade on Friday. So, in terms of what's at stake here, it's extension of the 2017 law, so that's more of the same. It's not going to do much for the economy. There are some provisions to improve business investment and research and development. They are, I think, positives or modest. And then there's a whole collection of promises the president made on the campaign trail, which, in my view, will have very little to do with economic growth and actually go the wrong direction from a tax policy point of view. The rule in tax policy is broaden the base, treat everything the same. This part, sort of pulls out special favors for overtime or tips or seniors. So it's not another step in tax reform. It's actually very different than the 2017 effort.
There was a caller in our first segment very concerned about the debt in this country. We're at about $37 trillion, approaching that. What does this bill do for the trajectory of debt in this country?
It makes it modestly worse, and that's a real disappointment. I thought the gold standard would be do something which is budget neutral, pro-growth tax reform, and if you do that, you would make some progress on the fiscal situation. That was the gold standard. At the other end of the spectrum, make it no worse. This doesn't even do that. So you can't be too excited about this from a budgetary point of view.
You talked about the Moody's downgrade. Can you just explain what that is?
Moody's is one of three very important rating agencies where they look at a borrower and say, you are creditworthy, or you're going to pay back for sure, or there's some risk associated with you. The first to downgrade the United States was Standard & Poor's in 2011. They said, you're no longer AAA, guaranteed to repay. We have some concerns. Those concerns were about the politics. 2023, Fitch Ratings, the second group, did essentially the same thing, said the U.S. is showing some inability to manage its finances. Those are largely political disputes over debt ceiling increases or shutting the government. We've been through these episodes. This is very different and more, I think, troubling, because what Moody said is, you have a lot of debt and you have a lot of interest and you might not be able to pay it. And for that reason, we're downgrading you from a surefire repay to a little bit of risk. That's not a good development.
The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he was asked about the Moody's downgrade. I want to play his response and then get your response to that.
I think that Moody's is a lagging indicator. I think that's what everyone thinks of credit agencies. Larry Summers and I don't agree on everything, but he said that when they downgraded the U.S. in 2011. So it's a lagging indicator. And just like Sean Duffy said with our air traffic control system, we didn't get here in the past 100 days. It's the Biden administration and the spending that we have seen over the past 4 years. We inherited 6.7% deficit to GDP, the highest when we weren't in a recession, not in a war, and we are determined to bring the spending down and grow the economy.
Fair enough, but under President Trump's first administration, he added $8 trillion to the nation's debt in his first term. So there's plenty of blame to go around.
No. But let's review. We were in the rescue portion of COVID. The Biden administration was in the recovery portion, and Kristen, it would have been, if not for Senators Manchin and Sinema, who were no longer in the Democratic caucus, it would have been 4 or 5 trillion more.
Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, yesterday on Meet the Press. your thoughts on his view on the Moody's downgrade.
It's a little disappointing. It has two answers. Number one, don't pay attention to it. It doesn't mean that much. Number two, it's not our fault. I'd like someone who is a little more serious to say, yeah, this is a problem, and we intend to do something about it. That's what the country really needs. The notion that it's a lagging indicator is just confusing to me. A lagging indicator is something where the problem arrives, and later you find out because the lagging indicator showed up. Well, that means he's acknowledging we have a problem. Why don't we do something about it?
Debt being a big part of that problem. How much debt is too much debt? Is there a moment when we will accumulate a certain amount of debt that will be a breaking point and we will all know it's too much debt?
The answer is yes. At some point in our trajectory, which is just ever increasing amounts of debt, even relative to the size of a growing economy, at some point international creditors take a look at that and lose the confidence that you will repay either the interest or the principal in a timely fashion, and as a result they no longer extend you the credit. Now, the trouble is, I don't know what that day that is. You don't know what day that is. No one knows what day that is. But that sort of misses the point.
All at once?
There have been lots of sovereign debt crises, the most recent being Greece, Portugal, Argentina, and they have this sort of troubling characteristic that it's usually something unrelated to the budget that triggers it, and then suddenly it's there. And so, like Hemingway famously said, you go bankrupt very slowly and then all at once. And that's a lot true for countries as well. So I think the right way to think about it is having a sovereign debt crisis is failing. That's all there is to it. But not having one isn't great. That's getting a D. I think we can do better and get a D. Let's take this on and, in fact, put our finances in order. We did that in the 20th century by and large. Average deficit's 2.2% of GDP compared to over 5 in this century. And we got better economic performance. The standard of living doubled every 30 years roughly. Now it doubles every 56 years. And you get the sense that people know that. Like, I don't have the same opportunities my parents had. Well, why don't we take care of our finances, plow that money into educating people, building factories, building software, all the things that make people more productive. That's the right way to go.
There was a caller on Friday on this program who said, why don't we have balanced budgets anymore? Why don't we have balanced budgets anymore?
We don't have balanced budgets anymore for two reasons. And we did manage the balanced budget at the end of the 20th century. If you're old, that would be me.
I recall.
I recall that. Two things have gone on in this century. Number one, we don't clean up after crises. You know, the 20th century had its crises, World War II, it had recessions, it had all the things we've faced. We've had recessions, financial crises, pandemics. That went way up. That was true in the 20th century, but then it came back down. And in this century, it hasn't. It goes up, it stays up. The spending goes up, it stays up. We don't clean up after the emergency response. So we have a lot more debt out there, and we have to pay the interest on it. We're going to pay $1 trillion in interest this year. The second thing that's gone on is just the entitlements. That we have Social Security and Medicare. They are more than one half of all non-interest spending over the next 10 years. They are driven by the demography. And there's just a fundamental mismatch between the revenue, which grows here, and the entitlements, which grow much faster. And that's continued throughout the 21st century. And so we have a structural deficit plus emergencies. It's added up poorly.
Douglas Holtz-Eakin is our guest. He's currently the president of the American Action Forum, formerly of the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, taking your phone calls with us for about the next 30, 35 minutes or so. It's 202-748-8000 for Democrats to call in, Republicans 202-748-8001, Independents 202-748-8002. As folks are calling in this big bill that's made its way out of the Budget Committee last night, House floor vote this week, remind viewers what the role of the Congressional Budget Office is, what a scoring is, and how that works.
So a score is very simply, how much will this bill change money flowing into the Treasury over the next 10 years, money flowing out of the Treasury over the next 10 years, what does it do to the deficit, or in the old days, surplus over the next 10 years? That's the score, and it shows it year by year, and it gives it for each provision in the bill. It's a detailed accounting of the budgetary impact of the bill. CBO's job is to score bills considered by Congress, so they know what they're doing to federal finances. In the process, they have to make some evaluations of how programs work, like how many people will take up a Medicaid provision and get health insurance or not. And they do all of that based on the consensus in the research literature and in a completely nonpartisan fashion. And so it's a phenomenal place.
Do you think those numbers in a place where we get a whole lot of numbers and people saying this means this and no, this means this, are the CBO numbers the most trustworthy numbers when they come out on a big bill like this?
Yes. That doesn't mean they're right.
Explain.
So, an example, when I was CBO director back in 2003, we passed the Medicare Modernization Act, which created what is known as the Part D drug program for seniors. And it's an insurance product against the cost of outpatient prescription drugs for seniors. There was no such insurance product out in nature anywhere at the time when that bill was passed. So the CBO had to imagine who would supply the insurance, who would supply the drugs, and at what price, how would the federal subsidy affect the purchase of the insurance and thus the drugs, and what would all this mean to the taxpayer? It was an extraordinarily complicated exercise, and we got it wrong by about 25%. But CBO is most important when Congress is doing something new about which there is the least evidence. And so it's not that they're right, but they're going to try their very best to be just as equally likely to be too high as too low, put it in the middle of the range, and give you some notion of the scale of the enterprise that Congress is involved in. And they did a good job on that.
Want to get into this bill that's going to be on the House floor a little bit more, but let me take some calls. There are plenty waiting for you. This is Katie in Silver Spring, Maryland, Democrat. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I was curious. We have our president who, in his personal life, had multiple bankruptcies, and maybe that was kind of a strategic way to manage his finances and capitalize it. I was wondering if maybe that perspective, how that translates, or if it does translate into the administration's policies and representation of, our debt, our standing in the world, and how we move policy forward. Thank you.
It's a really good question. I get asked questions like this a lot, including, why did the president levy these tariffs, and why did you do X, Y, or Z? And I don't know the answer to those questions. I'm not qualified to guess at his state of mind. It's certainly the case that his track record, both in his first time in office and now again as president, is not one that indicates he's serious about taking on the fiscal situation. If you're serious about that, you should be serious about taking on reforms to strengthen and preserve Social Security and Medicare. Those are the two big numbers. In the process, you have to reduce the amount of spending on them. But
Where do
he
you start?
He flatly took them off the table, and so that says we're not going to try to deal with it.
Is there enough fraud, waste, and abuse in those programs?
No.
So then how do you?
You have to change the programs. The programs were designed for the 1930s and 1960s, respectively. They aren't programs that are going to survive in the 21st century. They don't match our demography or anything like that. I mean, things change a lot. I mean, again, Part D program is much more recent. That was in 2003. It's now only 20 years later. In 2003, the major job was to have an insurance product that covered people's statins. Now we're keeping people alive on very expensive oncology drugs for years. It's a completely different world, and the program has to reflect that.
So what's a fair way to modify, and which means reduce benefits? Who does that impact? What do you think, if you were the one that was being asked design this bill, what would you do?
I wouldn't. I would let the American people decide, and I'm serious about that. So here's the situation, and it's the reason I'm hopeful, despite everything that I've lived a life of disappointment. I do budgets. Social Security's trust fund will go bankrupt in 8 years, which means they will not have the legal authority to pay full benefits, and there will be an across-the-board cut of 21% if Congress does nothing. Now, I don't think you or I believe Congress is going to sit aside and let people take a 21% cut in retirement. They shouldn't. But that means that if you're 55 and think about retiring in 10 years, there's going to be a Social Security reform. There has to be, and you don't know what your benefit's going to be. That's a terrible way to run a pension program. And I think every year that we get closer to that, people are going to start to realize, hey, what's the deal? How are you going to extend the life of this program so I can make my plans and I can retire? And Congress owes them that answer. And instead of going to a town hall and saying, I want to reform Social Security and ending up working at the Tasty Freeze, they're going to go to the town hall and say, we need to reform Social Security so that you know what the deal is. And they'll say, thank you, go do it. And then there will be a huge fight over the details of that.
So at some point, you don't think it becomes a hot potato that gets passed off?
It's no longer a liability to want to fix it. You have to fix it. And that's a good thing. And our representative democracy will be engaged in fixing it. And there will be a vigorous debate over the best way. And so I don't think any single sort of analyst like I is going to have the right solution. But we've had many commissions. They all do a collection of things that are very similar. They number one, they raise the cap on taxable earnings so that we collect more revenue. They changed the award of initial benefits so that very affluent people get less than of their lifetime earnings than they do now. We might even consider not giving the most affluent any at all. I mean, Social Security is an insurance policy against the event that you outlive your resources. And I can name a handful of people I don't think are going to outlive their resources. So maybe they don't get Social Security. And then you have to figure out where to draw the line. But that's just a more aggressive means testing. It's already mean tested some. And you can do some flipping of the dials on how you index things for inflation and things like that. You can make some real progress on making the program fit the 21st century and last longer.
Fort Lauderdale. Tom, Independent, good morning. You're on with Douglas Holtz-Eakin.
Good morning. Good morning. I wanted to ask about these Medicare cuts. The Republicans in Chipperoy want to make sick people work to give tax cuts to people like Charles Koch, and the Democrats can't make a point of this. What's wrong with these Republicans? And the second question I have is a tangent. All these DOGE press release, are any of these legislations and cost cuts going to be legalized in this new bill?
So two good questions. First, these are Medicaid cuts that they're proposing. That's the low-income health care program. And I don't think anyone is proposing that people who are sick be forced to work. They would have work requirements for those who are able and have no dependents. That's the basic framework. That's, in my view, not really a budgetary issue. That's a philosophy issue that says you should be willing to work in exchange for the assistance of your fellow Americans. And we've had this debate several times, and we'll have it again. But I don't think there's any real budgetary savings in the work requirements. That's a slightly different issue. As for the DOGE cuts, this is quietly a very big deal. There are two kinds of things that the DOGE has done. One, it has reduced federal employment, and the listener should know that's not a serious budgetary activity. We spend maybe $400 billion on compensation for civilian workers in the federal government. We ran a deficit of $1.8 trillion last year. We're not going to solve the deficit problems by changing the footprint of the federal government. The second thing they've done is just simply not spend some money. That's called an impoundment. The Congress has authorized the spending. They're not spending it. A long time ago, in 1974, President Nixon did this. They took him to court, and that actually spawned the creation of the Congressional Budget Office, which I ran, the budget committees in both the House and Senate, the budget process, and now it is against the law to simply impound money. Instead, a president can say, I don't want to spend this money, notify Congress, and Congress has 45 days to agree, in which case the money comes back, it's called a rescission, or disagree, in which case the money goes out. I fully expect that the money that DOGE is just sitting on will end up as part of a court case that will test the legality of that 74 law. And if the courts uphold its legality, that money has to go out. And all of those proclaimed savings will have turned out to be ephemeral. They haven't really cut anything.
We have several viewers who tweet about this program every day and have a conversation as they do it. Michael Langweiser is one of them. He sends this question to you. How much will taxes increase if the 2017 tax reform is not made permanent? And will or could that help the budget deficit?
So they would go up by about $425 billion next year. So that would help the budget deficit by $425 billion. I mean, there's no question about that. My concern is that abruptly that's going to generate enough headwinds to knock the economy sideways or in its weakened state into a recession. And one thing that does not ever improve federal finances is a recession. I mean, we have automatic stabilizers that spend more and collect less taxes in recessions. We also have Congresses that, typically turn right around and do a big tax cut or do a big spending program to counter the recession. I don't think we've done a very good job on that front, but those are reflexes I've seen, so I don't think we should root for a recession.
By the way, I should note, we've been talking about this budget bill that made it out of committee last night. For viewers who want to watch it, the House Rules Committee just announced their meeting to consider the bill. And this is the rules vote, the package that gets put together for the final floor vote. And that's going to take place Wednesday, and I had to triple check it, at 1 a.m. Yes. 1 a.m. ahead of the floor debate and vote.
But only C-SPAN has viewers at 1 a.m., so...
You can watch the rules debate, and those are often vigorous debates about what gets to be considered on the House floor. But 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning, I should say that is Eastern time for viewers around the country. This is Jeannie in Marysville, Ohio, Republican. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a question. I wanted to know, is there a budget for, I'm a welder, and I've been experiencing union discrimination, and I want to know if there's something in the budget for the working class people that are trying to work and trying to get employed, and there has been pushback on women in construction. And I want to bring that up to see if there's going to be something in the budget for policies and procedures that will help individuals like myself that are being, blackballed from the industry.
Well, thank you for the question. The short answer is no, and the reason is that the Republicans are trying to pass this legislation using special fast-track procedures known as reconciliation. Forget the origins of the name. The important restriction on reconciliation is that you only get to do that if you stick to things that are strictly budgetary in nature, raise and lower spending, raise and lower taxes. You can't go out and make new policy, like union or anti-discrimination policy. So you hear a lot of talk about things that might be in this bill, energy policies, border policies, regulation reforms. There's going to be a winnowing of what's in there by the Senate parliamentarian, where they will sit down and literally go through the bill line by line and say, is this primarily budgetary in nature or not? And if it's not, they'll take it out. So the reconciliation has become something both parties have used. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, which Democrats used reconciliation to pass, they tried to include an increase in the federal minimum wage, and that came out as not primarily budgetary in nature. So it seems to me that's not likely to make it.
When the Senate parliamentarian does that, is it going line by line, or does one side propose challenges and say, this doesn't seem budgetary to me, can you check that one? How does that work? Is it kind of like knocking off jurors in a juror pool?
This is a procedure which we owe to the late Senator Robert Byrd, who really didn't like the idea of reconciliation because it bypassed the rules of the Senate. It allowed a finite amount of debate, no filibusters, and then a vote.
And he liked to protect the rules of the Senate.
He loved his Senate, and he loved the rules, and so he wanted to put it in a box. And so the way this works is literally the parliamentarians hear the bill, Republicans, Democrats, and they start going through, and Republicans say, that's fine, and Democrats can say, no, I don't like that, and they make their case, and the parliamentarian decides. It's called a bird bath.
Is that something that happens behind closed doors?
Yeah.
Is that something you think would ever be in front of cameras, or no?
I've never actually thought about it, but I think probably not.
D. Cheney, Washington, Democrat. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Mr.
Good morning.
Eakin.
Yes.
I am hoping that you can help me make the math work.
Pick the right guy.
As far as the budget is concerned, and this is including DOGE, this is including the fact that we are practically at 5 months in 2025, and the last I checked, we're already $319 million over budget.
Got to be more than that.
They'd be doing well if it was that.
Probably billions, would be my guess.
Well, I thought it was millions, but maybe I didn't get the right number. It's just I'm confused. If DOGE is doing such a great job, why are they asking for $4.5 trillion more for the next budget? And why are they changing the debt ceiling, making it $4 trillion higher as well?
So, the math is very confusing, and I would say you've got at least three things going on. First of all, for level setting, in fiscal 2025, the year that we're in, the federal government will spend $7 trillion. It'll spend $1 trillion on interest, It'll spend $1.8 trillion on the annual decisions of Congress, defense spending, funding for the agencies to do basic research, infrastructure, education, all those things. And it'll spend $4.2 trillion on so-called mandatory spending, which are entitlement programs that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Affordable Care Act, farm programs, things like that. So that's a lot of money. And the president has made requests for changes to that $1.8 trillion in discretionary spending for next year. So if you've heard about wanting more or less, it's in that context. That's not yet law. Congress is now evaluating those. They're going to have to pass law to decide how much they're going to spend. So that's a to be determined. The House and Senate are considering changes to the big mandatory spending programs, the 4.2, to see where that goes. And as you can tell, there's a lot of controversy over where they're headed on that front. The bulk of the changes are concentrated in the committee that has Medicaid jurisdiction, so Medicaid gets all the attention, and they've said they're not going to touch Medicare and Social Security, so they have limited ability to change that very much. So those are all things going on as they fight about what it will actually look like next year, starting from this baseline of spending $7 trillion and raising $5.2 trillion in revenue. Big gap in there. Then there's the debt limit. The debt limit says that, we have run deficits for a long, long time, and as a result, we've borrowed a lot. And at some point, you hit the limit that Congress has authorized the Treasury to borrow. And we hit that limit on January 1st. And since then, the Treasury has been keeping us under the limit using what they refer to as extraordinary measures, which in reality are not particularly extraordinary. We go to federal employees' retirement accounts. We take the treasuries out of them. They count toward the limit. So if you take them back, they're under the limit. We then borrow more from the public. We have cash. We pay our bills. This process, and then we restore the employees' treasuries after the fact. But this process can only go on so long. And they've said it can last till August. They have to raise the debt limit. They've already spent that money. The bills are just coming due. I'm concerned, given the downgrade by Moody's, all the eyes are on the United States, that we might have another episode where we go right up to the last second on raising the debt limit and scare financial markets to death. I think in these circumstances, it would be wise to have a plan to take that off the table. But I haven't heard anything about that, so it makes me nervous.
You mentioned we're going to spend about $1 trillion in interest on the debt.
Yeah.
Can you ever renegotiate interest payments? Can the federal government ever do that? Or would that be a disaster?
That would be a disaster because that's tantamount to saying we can't pay. And we want to get a payment plan, sort of lower our payments. And I think that would frighten international lenders to death. And the disaster comes from the fact that treasuries, the dollar is the foundation of the global financial system. You hear this all the time. But what that really means is that if I'm an Argentina or an Ecuador or France, I can go get a hold of some treasuries, and I know I can buy some because they're always available, and I know I can sell them when I need the cash to pay this international transaction. So it's that willingness to buy and sell, the liquidity of treasuries. And the reason we have that is they're not risky. Everyone believes you can always get your money. If you're starting to have to get something where you're not sure you get your money back, you don't want to buy it. And now you've ground the international financial system to a halt. And we shouldn't mess with that.
Kathy, in the Tar Heel State Republican, you're on with Douglas Holtz-Eakin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm 65 years old, and I have paid in Social Security and worked all my life. And I'm tired of people viewing it as an entitlement program. It's not. We paid in it. But everybody says that we're not paying for Medicare. Yes, I have $150 a month for my Social Security benefits taken out for that very purpose. And might add that you can go to the government health care website and get insurance for $79 a month. I also pay. And then people have been getting free health care for how long? And I also pay for a premium of $140 a month to protect myself financially from that 20% that the Medicare doesn't cover. So quit telling us that we're not responsible. We have been far more responsible than everybody for the past 10 or 15 years of this generation. We have been robbed. The government has dipped into this fund, We've had theft, physical irresponsibility of both political parties. So I don't want to hear this anymore. We paid our fair share. We went through a period where corporate raiders took our pensions, lost our homes, lost our jobs. We have been victims multiple times. You have no idea what our generation has been through.
Kathy, let me let Douglas Holtz-Eakin jump in.
So lots of people feel that they paid for all of their Social Security, and many have. Social Security redistributes, and there are some people who pay more on a lifetime basis than they ever get out of it. They're typically the affluent. Some people pay less, and they get more out of the program than they put in. So that's a case-by-case basis. Medicare was never designed to be fully funded. The original program was just the hospital program, and it was a mini Social Security. It had a payroll tax and a little trust fund, and you paid the hospitals for the care. But when they moved to doing outpatient care and did prescription drugs, and now the Medicare Advantage whole insurance program, they decided to make it premium funded, so you pay a premium like you would with a private health insurance fund. But when they looked at the premiums, they said, oh, that's a lot of money. We'll have the premiums cover a quarter of the cost of the program. We'll get the rest from the Treasury. So Medicare was never designed to be financially self-sufficient, and it's not. And nobody pays for their Medicare. It gets subsidized by the general taxpayer throughout the life of the program. That's the biggest source of red ink in the federal government. It's responsible for about a third of all debt outstanding. And I think going forward, it would be wise to rethink how all of Medicare adds up. Maybe put the entire program on a budget and make sure that it does add up each year instead of just always going to the Treasury and getting more money.
About 10 minutes left. I did want to ask you, what's your view on tariffs?
Oh, I think this has been a terrible misadventure. I do. Tariffs are taxes. And so if you just looked at this from a tax policy point of view, if you wanted to raise a fair amount of revenue, and what he proposed on April 2nd was a $400 billion tax increase. Now, we're all worried about not doing that next year to avoid a recession. He did that on April 2nd. That was extraordinary, and you saw how people reacted. So you wouldn't pick a national sales tax that sort of only covered half of or a third of the goods or something. You'd have a broad base and a rate. And it's a very regressive tax. And tariffs are really hard to administer, and they invite...
Why is it a regressive tax?
It hits the poor harder than the affluent. So they're buying things out of need, and they have to pay the tax. And so it's not a good revenue instrument. It's not a good idea, I think, to have a big tax increase. I mean, the economy's noticeably weaker now than it was even in December. There's no question about that. And we have different kinds of tariffs. We have these product tariffs like steel, aluminum, autos, and he's promised semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, lumber, copper, and films. All of these are done under the guise of national security. These are a threat to our national security. We have to have a tariff, do more of it at home. I think it's an open question whether that ever plays out. Certainly, we've done steel tariffs. This is now the third time in my lifetime. I worked in the White House. 2001, we did it. Did it again in 2018. Here we are again. It doesn't work. Like, we've got to stop trying to save the steel industry this.
Is it bringing in enough revenue to make a difference on that spending gap that we keep watching into the future?
Suppose it's $400 billion and we have a $1.8 trillion deficit. It's not a substantial amount of revenue. It never will be. So it's questionable whether it's working on its sort of policy merits. It's not a budgetary item in my view. And the ones on Canada and Mexico, I mean, Canada, Mexico, and the United States are a unified economic entity. And those tariffs threaten to tear it apart. They're the most damaging thing he proposed, and people recognized it. And so, he carved those out to a great extent. We have a 10% universal tariff. We've never done that. And now we have these reciprocal tariffs, which the latest thing is, Secretary Besson said he's going to start sending letters to people, giving them their new tariff numbers, if they don't get to the table and negotiate. And that puts us at levels we haven't seen in 100 years. So we are in uncharted territory with this experiment, and I haven't seen any good come of it yet.
Ronald, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Democrat, good morning. About 5 minutes left here with Douglas Holtz-Eakin.
Okay, I'll read quick. I got two little things. Has there been a budget analysis of work requirements? How much is it actually going to save?
Not much.
All right. it can't be. I mean, you require people work. And then the second thing is you got to go, you want to volunteer for city or state or whatever, or businesses to show work requirements. A lot of those businesses don't want people there that are unemployed and have handicaps or whatever to work. And so they don't want those people. So what do you think about those?
Well, I don't know about the latter. That's just not something I've ever studied or looked at. Certainly, work requirements have come up a number of times in the policy debates. And as I said to a caller earlier, I don't really think they're about the budget. There's never a lot of budgetary dollars saved with work requirements. It's about your view of the philosophy that you should be willing to work in exchange for the support of your fellow taxpayers. And that's really the debate.
This is Carla in Missouri Independent. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I wanted to ask your guest, what is the status of the SNAP program and what he thinks the prospects are to get it restored to the budget at the House and then and in the Senate? I'd like to know what he thinks about it.
So the SNAP program is still on the books. It's not going away. The reforms to the SNAP program that have been proposed in the House are primarily shifting more of the burden to pay for it to the states, and to have that the amount that they shift depend on how effectively the program is administered, and they have some measures of errors in payments that they want to use to index this. But it's not really anything that says we want to change the beneficiary's life. They want to change how the program gets administered and who foots the bill.
Can I come back to tariffs for a second?
Sure.
This headline from this weekend: Donald Trump tells Walmart to eat the tariffs after the retailer warned it will raise prices. His Truth Social post. This is what it said: Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs as the reason for raising prices through the chain. Between Walmart and China, they should, as it said, eat the tariffs and not charge valued customers anything. I'll be watching, and so will your customers.
I don't think we should have gravity. I really don't. Things fall, they hurts. I mean, that's no good. It's a cost. Businesses have to cover their costs. And he can watch them, and he can not like it. But Walmart's in a business that has really tiny margins, 3%. He just put a 30% tariff on China. So you can kiss the margins goodbye, and Walmart's not going to be around long if it does nothing but sell things at a loss to keep the president happy. They don't have a choice. He's put them in an untenable position.
We're so focused on recent memory. Do you remember another time a president told a specific company how to price their goods?
No. I'm sure it's happened, but no.
Car industry?
Yeah,
or...
I mean, we've had bully pulpit job owning by presidents on issues like labor issues. President Biden walked a picket line. I mean, so people have done similar things just to tell people how to run their business. But he gets pretty granular, and that's unusual.
This is Wayne. I try to get it in. Wayne from Pennsylvania, Democrat. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, how you doing, John?
Doing well.
And Douglas.
Morning.
I got one simple thing to ask. Everybody's worried about Medicare. Well, let's take the cap off. Let Jeff Bezos, let Elon Musk pay their share. That's all I got to say. If y'all want to save it, that's a simple thing. God bless you all. Bye.
Take the cap off.
As it turns out, there is no cap on Medicare payroll taxes. So it's a smaller tax. It's taxed on all your labor earnings. The cap is in Social Security. And there have been a variety of proposals to raise caps, change the caps.
Where do you stand on those proposals for Social Security?
I think we should raise the cap for sure. I mean, when Social Security was first adopted, we taxed about 90% of wages. We're now well south of that, low 80s, high 70s, depending on how you do the measurement. I think we have big budget problems, and we're not going to solve them on either exclusively the tax side, that won't work, or the spending side. And so we got to figure out where we are willing to do spending cuts and tax increases, and that, as we know, has been politically difficult.
Final 2 minutes here. I did want to ask you about the American Action Forum. What projects are you working on that we haven't talked about yet that you do want to discuss?
So I built the American Action Forum out of my experiences on the McCain campaign, where it seemed to me that what I did was I did policy research, policy education, policy options, policy advice, all of those things, but I did it in real time on whatever was happening that day. And the idea was to educate the people around me on the campaign on what was going on and what we might do. And it struck me that there would be value to that outside of the political setting, that average Americans might want the same information. An oil rig blows up in the Gulf and they're a market-oriented person and they say, oh, what are our options? What can we do? So that's what the American Action Forum does. So we are an events-driven think tank, different than most think tanks. We're going to cover what's going on in the Congress, and we've talked about that today. That's what we're doing. And we keep track of what goes on in the agencies as well, because there's a lot of executive activity right now.
AmericanActionForum.com, easy enough to find.
Yep.
Douglas Holtz-Eakin is the president of that group, former CBO director, and do always appreciate your time on the Washington Journal.
Thanks for having me.
Later this morning, a conversation with Virginia Case Solomon of the watchdog group Common Cause. Stick around for that discussion in about a half hour. But starting now, it's our open forum. Any public policy issue, any political issue you want to talk about, phone lines are yours. Numbers are on your screen. Start calling in, and we'll get to your calls right after the break.
In a nation divided, a rare moment of unity. This fall, C-SPAN presents Ceasefire, where the shouting stops and the conversation begins. In a town where partisan fighting prevails. One table, two leaders, one goal, to find common ground. This fall, Ceasefire, on the network that doesn't take sides. Only on C-SPAN.
There are many ways to listen to C-SPAN radio, anytime, anywhere. In the Washington, D.C. area, listen on 90.1 FM. Use our free C-SPAN Now app, or go online to cspan.org/radio. On SiriusXM radio on channel 455, the TuneIn app, and on your smart speaker by simply saying, play C-SPAN radio. Hear our live call-in program, Washington Journal, daily at 7 a.m. Eastern. Listen to House and Senate proceedings, committee hearings, news conferences, and other public affairs events live throughout the day. And for the best way to hear what's happening in Washington with fast-paced reports, live interviews, and analysis of the day, catch Washington Today, weekdays at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. Listen to C-SPAN programs on C-SPAN radio, anytime, anywhere. C-SPAN, democracy unfiltered.
Get C-SPAN wherever you are with C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app that puts you at the center of democracy, live and on demand. Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams of floor proceedings and hearings from the U.S. Congress, White House events, the courts, campaigns, and more from the world of politics, all at your fingertips. Catch the latest episodes of Washington Journal. Find scheduling information for C-SPAN's TV and radio networks, plus a variety of compelling podcasts. The C-SPAN Now app is available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Download it for free today. C-SPAN, democracy unfiltered. CSpanShop.org is C-SPAN's online store. Browse through our latest collection of C-SPAN products, apparel, books, home decor, and accessories. There's something for every C-SPAN fan, and every purchase helps support our nonprofit operations. Shop now or anytime at cspanshop.org.